Yeah, yeah, it's the Chuck Barris look. This isn't the greatest game ever played. It's one of the games that quietly puts the Giants on the road towards it. October 12th, 1958, Griffith Stadium in Washington, D.C. The New York Giants and the Washington Redskins are both 1 and 1. There's only 12 games on the schedule, so week 3 isn't early enough to shrug off. One of these teams is going to leave with a winning record, and the other's already 2 games behind the unbeaten Cleveland Browns. Neither side plays particularly good football. New York opened its season by flattening the Chicago Cardinals 37-7. Then the Giants went to Philadelphia and lost a 27-24 game to the Eagles. Washington started with a 24-14 win over those same Eagles. Then they got hammered by the Cardinals 37-10. That leaves all 4 teams 1 and 1. But they don't feel like equal operations. Washington is coached by Joe Kuharich. Their quarterback is A. LeBaron. He's a 5 foot something little general, and he's a decorated Marine officer who was wounded twice during the Korean War before returning to pro football. He's not physically imposing, but he's mobile, deceptive, and capable of moving an offense with play action and improvisation. 1950s version of Michael Vick. LeBaron makes the Pro Bowl in this season. So Jim Lee Howell is the head coach. But you know who runs the offense? Vince Lombardi. You know who runs the defense? Tom Landry. So Howell's not irrelevant, exactly. But when your coordinators are Vince Lombardi and Tom Landry, history tends to shove you towards the edge of the photograph. The Giants also have Frank Gifford, still only 2 years removed from winning league MVP and leading New York to the 1956 NFL Championship. He can run, catch, block, and throw. In this era, describing somebody as a halfback doesn't always tell you what he actually does. In addition to Gifford, New York also uses 2 quarterbacks. Don Heinrich generally starts and helps organize the offense. Then veteran Charlie Connerly enters and gives a different personality. And that sounds needlessly complicated. But it works. There are 30,348 people inside Griffith Stadium, and the Giants immediately start moving Washington backwards. Mel Triplett supplies the early power. Don Heinrich handles the passing. Then Frank Gifford finishes the first scoring drive with a 6-yard touchdown run. Pat Summerall adds the extra point, 7-0 Giants, and New York comes right back. Heinrich looks for Bob Schneider downfield and finds him for a 41-yard touchdown. Schnaker takes the ball over Washington defender Carl Anderson, and before the first quarter is finished, New York leads 14-0. Washington finally settles down during the second quarter. LeBaron starts using his movement and ball handling to keep New York from attacking in a straight line. He leads an 80-yard drive and finds Jim Podolay uncovered for a 39-yard touchdown. Podolay's a fascinating weapon. He's a halfback with sprinter speed, averaging nearly 24 yards per reception during the 1958 season. He doesn't catch a lot of passes, but when he does, something substantial usually happens. And now it's 14-7. Then, the Giants give Washington another opening. Alex Webster loses the ball. Joe Scudero grabs it in the air and returns it 20 yards to New York's 35. LeBaron hits halfback Don Bossler for 29 yards, putting Washington at the 1-yard line. And Ed Sutton takes it across from there. Sam Baker makes his second extra point, and just like that, it's 14-14. New York controlled the first quarter. Washington owned the second. Then everybody stops. The third quarter passes without a point. Both teams keep turning the ball over. Each side finishes with 2 interceptions thrown and 2 fumbles lost. That's 8 combined turnovers. It's not a chess match. It's 2 teams tripping over each other and themselves. The yardage is almost even. New York finishes with 344 yards. Washington has 317. The Giants have the better running game. They pile up 195 yards against Washington's 69. Nice. Washington compensates by throwing for 248. Most of the second half is played with the score stuck at 14. Washington recovered from the early punch, but the Giants' offense has mostly disappeared. Mostly, because New York breaks out one more time. Charlie Connerly takes over and leads an 8-play, 77-yard drive. The Giants run the ball well enough to keep Washington honest. Then Connerly reaches the 10-yard line and finds Ken McAfee for the touchdown. Summerall makes it 21-14. That's the only touchdown scored by either team in the second half. But it's also enough. The Giants' defense protects the lead. Washington never answers, and New York escapes Griffith Stadium with a 7-point win. There's one more piece of this Washington team that shouldn't be cleaned up or pushed aside. In 1958, the Redskins are still an entirely white football team. Owner George Preston Marshall refuses to integrate his roster, even though every other NFL organization has already done so. Washington doesn't add black players until 1962, 4 years later, and then, only after pressure from the federal government, threatens the team's use of its new stadium. So when we look at the 1958 Redskins, we aren't simply looking at a struggling football organization. We're looking at a team deliberately refusing access to a major section of the available talent pool. Not only is that morally indefensible, it's competitively stupid. The victory moves New York to 2-1, but the Giants haven't figured everything out. A week later, they return home and lose 23-6 to the Chicago Cardinals. New York's 2-2, and whatever championship path exists, it's not visible yet. But then the Giants start finding it. They beat Pittsburgh, they go into Cleveland and defeat Jim Brown and the Browns. They beat the Baltimore Colts at Yankee Stadium. And after another loss to Pittsburgh, New York closes the regular season with 4 straight wins. One of those victories comes against Washington. That one's not close. The Redskins visit Yankee Stadium on November 23rd, and the Giants beat them 30-0. New York sweeps the season series by a combined score of 51-14. Washington finishes 4-7-1. LeBaron has a good individual season, throwing 11 touchdowns and earning another Pro Bowl selection. But the team around him never develops any consistency. Washington can score 45 against the Cardinals one week, then disappear against New York 2 weeks later. The Giants finished 9-3, tied with Cleveland on top of the Eastern Conference. There's no standings tiebreaker to settle it, so the teams play an extra game. New York shuts Cleveland out 10-0 to win the East. 1 week later, the Giants host the Baltimore Colts for the NFL Championship, and that game goes into sudden death overtime. That game changes professional football. That game becomes known as the greatest game ever played. But before New York could reach that stage, it had to survive games like this one. A sloppy afternoon in Washington. 8 turnovers, 2 quarterbacks, one useful fourth quarter drive. Giants 21, Redskins 14. I'm the Wolf, and I hope to see you next time. Thanks for watching.